Alright, time for a hot take. I do not like having multiple playable characters in Sonic games. In fact, I think in a lot of Sonic games, having multiple playable characters takes away from the enjoyment I could have if they stuck to just one character. That's the reason why I prefer games like Colors, Shadow Generations, or even Sonic Lost World over games like Sonic Adventure 2. Okay, I know that may sound like a crazy statement, but just hear me out. Having other playable characters in concept is a great idea. There's nothing wrong with giving people the option to play as Amy, Knuckles, or Tails. And there are already a lot of Sonic games that handle multiple playable characters really well. The classics and the Rush games come to mind immediately. The issues I have are not with the characters themselves, but rather with their differing playstyles and how they've been implemented. Over the course of Sonic's history, the implementation of multiple playstyles has rarely ever been good if you ask me. Specifically with games like Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Frontiers: The Final Horizon. And with it being heavily rumored and even somewhat confirmed that the next Sonic game will implement multiple different playstyles, I wanted to talk about why I personally do not want that. So let's talk about Sonic Adventure 2, which is one of the most highly praised Sonic games of all time. But I never agreed with that. In fact, Sonic Adventure 2 doesn't even scratch my top 10 Sonic games. It's just kind of decent at best. And the main reason why I think this is because of how the game handles multiple playable characters. I'm sure we all know how it works by now. The game is split into two separate campaigns, each featuring three distinct gameplay styles. We have the speed-based action stages with Sonic and Shadow, the more open-ended treasure hunting with Knuckles and Rouge, and the linear score-based mech shooting with Tails and Eggman. I don't think it's much of a hot take when I say that the shooting and treasure hunting levels aren't nearly as fun as the speed-based levels. In fact, I would go as far as saying that these two playstyles are just flat out bad. In the case of treasure hunting, I never have the motivation to get better at them, as I do with the speed stages, because these missions are boring. Unless you memorize the dozens of possible spawn locations of the Emerald Shards, you'll mostly just be aimlessly flying around until one pops up on your radar. And the mech stages are just kind of mindless for the most part. You just go down linear hallways, hold square to shoot, and complete the occasional platforming segment. It's pure filler. And the worst part about it is that in order to play all of the speed-based stages, you have to play through the mech and treasure hunting stages. Since every playstyle is integrated into the same campaign, these characters are required. A game I actually really like is Sonic Adventure, but this game also has a bunch of playstyles that pale in comparison to Sonic's. But the difference here is that all of these characters are practically optional. You can play through every single Sonic level without playing as any of the other characters. Sure, you'll miss out on the true final boss fight if you don't play the other campaigns, but that's really nothing in comparison to what Adventure 2 has you missing out on if you don't want to play as anyone besides Sonic. And that's the whole fucking game, basically. All of this also applies to games like Sonic Unleashed. If you ask me, the Werehog absolutely sucks compared to the daytime stages, and they feel like a complete chore to get through. Okay, so an easy fix for all of this would be to just make the other playstyles optional, right? Just give me the ability to play through the entire game as just Sonic, is what I would say if it weren't for one other issue that I currently have with Sonic's recent games, mainly Frontiers. In most scenarios, what naturally happens when integrating multiple playstyles is that it takes a lot more effort to do so. I mean, duh, right? My issue is that all of that time that's put into making, say, 4 different playstyles could instead be used on truly perfecting just one playstyle. And we can already see this in certain Sonic games. Look at Shadow Generations. In that game, you only have one character, being Shadow, but he has so many different abilities and powers. His playstyle in Shadow Generations, I would say, is the most well-rounded and fun in the entire series. Now, would that be the case if in the same game, they had a completely different playstyle with Rouge or Omega? I don't think so. Another example I want to bring up is Final Horizon. This DLC introduced 3 new playable characters, each with substantially different abilities from Sonic's. In my opinion, the fun of playing as all 3 of these characters doesn't even remotely compare to the fun I have with just playing as Sonic. The new characters have slow and unsatisfying combat, along with weird movement limitations. And the reason is obvious. They had a whole development cycle of just working with Sonic and his gameplay. So of course, when introducing 3 more playable characters in a free DLC of all things, naturally, they would not get the same treatment as Sonic. But imagine if, for this free DLC, they just had to worry about making Tails playable, and nobody else. Well, I would imagine that Tails would be way more fun to play as and way more polished than he currently is. And again, I have no issue with other playstyles being optional, as long as Sonic's gameplay is fully perfected and nothing else can be done to make it better. However, I think a lot of you can agree with me when I say that we are not currently anywhere near that point. In Sonic Sonic Frontiers, even though they had all of that time to focus on Sonic's gameplay, it's not anywhere near perfect. Hell, they made it so that we had to tune his physics and speed attributes in the damn settings menu. I really don't think we should be focusing on developing other playable characters when one of them hasn't even reached their fullest potential. So here's my ideal scenario. If they do end up choosing to implement other playable characters in the next Sonic game, then make them completely optional. Do not force the player to play other playstyles that they do not want to engage with, especially if the playstyles are as different as they are in games like Sonic Adventure 2. But what I really want right now is for this next game to just fully perfect Sonic's gameplay, without any sacrifices being made and any of that manpower being put into making any other character. Again, I cannot stress this enough. Multiple playable characters and playstyles in concept is not a bad thing. It's just that with Sonic's current catalog, I don't like how they've been handled, and considering where Sonic's gameplay is currently at and how we're still pretty far from an ideal Sonic gameplay style, I don't think this next game should have any other playstyles until Sonic's gameplay is the best it could possibly be. But yeah guys, let me know what you all think about having multiple playable characters in Sonic games. Do you like having multiple playstyles, or do you just prefer having one? Let me know in the comments down below. But that's all for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.